One of the biggest things that's going to decide how much your tennis improves and what level you can get to is how well you practice. And the reality is that most tennis players do not practice in a way that allows them to make progressive improvements over time. Now, there's multiple different things that are important when it comes to practice, but in this video, I'm going to be addressing one very, very important area, and that is going to be the use of feedback and getting feedback within your practice sessions to enable you to improve. I hope you find the video helpful. If you do, it'd be great if you could give me that thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel as well. Feedback is a really important part of high-level practice, because without getting feedback, you could be doing something wrong over and over again and just reinforcing bad habits. But it works the other way as well. If you're doing something well, you need to know about it so you can do that over and over again and develop good habits. Now, in terms of feedback, we can get feedback about the result and where the ball lands, or we can focus on feedback about the technical thing that we're trying to change. Now, there's a time and a place for everything, and I've made another video that goes into more detail. I'll leave that in the description. But for higher level players at later stages of learning, we're going to be more concerned with where the ball's going. If you're trying to change your technique and the sort of thing that most people are watching YouTube videos about, then it's better to get feedback on the technical elements that we're talking about. And then in terms of that feedback, we've got either verbal feedback and we've got video feedback, and that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the video. So the type of feedback that is going to be better for you is going to be really dependent on the situation, your skill level, your level of body awareness, and the environment that you're practicing in. So I want to give you some kind of general rules to think about it, because the research is pretty clear on this. When people get video feedback, they watch themselves doing things on camera, it enables them to learn much more effectively. So video feedback is sort of the gold standard. But verbal feedback definitely has a time and a place as well, especially if you've got good body awareness, because some things are really easy to monitor yourself. An example of this is going to be getting too close or too far away from the ball. Most people are going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on. They're going to recognize when they get too close, they're going to recognize when they're reaching for the ball. So it's very easy when that's going on to give yourself verbal feedback and go, hey Richard, you were too close to the ball on that one. I want you to keep a little bit more distance between you and the ball. So that's potentially going to be an easy one to work on. Same thing for something like meeting the ball out in front. It's normally pretty easy to tell when you're hitting the ball late and getting jammed, and you can normally feel it when you get it right. So it's very easy to create verbal feedback for yourself around that. Okay, Richard, try and meet the ball further out in front. Now, the way that you speak to yourself is going to be important. I've got a video that talks more about that. I'll leave that down in the description so you can check it out. But sometimes the verbal feedback just isn't going to be as effective, especially if your body awareness is poor. So maybe you're working on something a lot more subtle. You're working on trying to get efficient timing, driving through the hips, then the torso, then using in the body. So you're trying to improve the sequencing of your biomechanics. Now, some players are going to be able to pick that up. If you take an advanced player and you go, okay, how did that one go? They're like, yeah, I was a little bit off in terms of the timing. But most lower level players do not have the body awareness to make that sort of thing happen. So in that instance, then it's going to be much better to use video to get feedback so you can analyze what's going on. Same thing for anything else that requires a high degree of precision and awareness. If you don't have good body awareness, video feedback becomes more and more important, because it is very common for players to completely miss things that they're either doing well or they're doing correctly until they see themselves back on video. So think verbal feedback for simple instructions like distancing and spacing and meeting the ball out in front, and verbal feedback when you've got higher levels of kinesthetic awareness and understanding about where your body is in space. Video feedback for more complicated technical stuff, and if you've got worse body awareness. Now, in terms of actually using video feedback. Now that creates challenges for people because it tends to slow down the practice session, so people are reluctant to do it. But depending on your body, depending on what you're working on, it's something that you might just kind of have to swallow and just do. Now, a tip or a way that you can start to incorporate this that I think is really effective. I do this when I'm working on the ball machine, because on a ball machine, players have a habit of just kind of hitting ball after ball after ball and just not really working on quality. What I like to do is set the camera up at the back of the court. I put a timer on the camera, so I'm just using my phone to record myself. So I set it for a minute, hit record, ball machine's going, I work on whatever drill that I'm trying to work on, and then when the timer goes off after a minute, it kind of cuts me off and prevents me from working for too long. And I choose a minute because, you know, there's not many points to go on for a minute. That is a long amount if you're working at a good intensity. And then after the minute, I have to go, stop the camera. I then kind of watch myself, go, okay, what did I do on that? Have a rest while I'm watching it back, and then repeat. So obviously that's going to slow the practice session down, but for a lot of people, that's also going to allow them to achieve a much higher level of practice. And you could do a very similar thing if you're working with a practice partner, because feedback, you need to get it. If you can do it in the form of verbal feedback, fantastic if you've got the awareness for it. If you haven't, you need to use video. You need to understand what's going on in order to make changes. Okay, this one is a pretty simple concept. You've just got to make sure you incorporate it into your practice, because not getting sufficient quality practice is one of the big things that prevents players from improving. The other thing that prevents players from improving is kind of running into what I call their ability wall, because there is a skill requirement to everything on court, and a lot of players are watching videos about kind of breakdowns of how the pros hit the ball, and they're trying to develop ATP style strokes without having the eye to hand and eye to foot coordination, the underlying skills that are required to use those high level strokes. So if you really want to take your game to the next level, in addition to good quality, well structured practice, you might need to do a little bit of work on your underlying systems. And if that's something you want to learn about, that's the main thing that I help players with. I've created a free masterclass that's going to go into more detail about it. I'll place a link up there so you can check it out, and I'll place a link down in the description as well. So I'll explain more about brain-based training, and at the end it's going to give you a little bit more information about my program and how I work with players and next steps that are involved if you would like to potentially work with me. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.